It's Friday the 16th of October 2020 and this is the Friday night preview show live on the Seasiders podcast. In tonight's show we'll be looking ahead to Blackpool's game against Crewe. We'll be getting an insight into Pool's opponents from Steve, who's a member of the Crew's podcast, The Railwaymen, and we'll also be hearing your thoughts ahead of the game with now the transfer window officially shut. I'm Sam Fielding and this is a Seasiders podcast.
Ollie's already changed the world. Small town from the north of England with a great tradition.
Yes, good evening and welcome back to the Friday night preview show live on the Seasiders podcast. I'm Sam Fielding, as I mentioned before, and we're going to be talking all about Crewe and some Blackpool news as well, with the transfer deadline day shutting at 5 p.m. today, and Blackpool doing two very good deals indeed. First of all, I will introduce our two guests and one familiar face and voice all over TV, radio and podcast. It's Tim Fielding. Tim, great to have you on the show with us again.
Evening, Sam.
Good evening. And we also have Steve, who I mentioned in the introduction. He's part of the newly formed Crew podcast, The Railwaymen. Steve, it's great to have you on the show.
Thanks very much. Thanks for inviting me, chaps. Good to be here.
Yeah, definitely great to have you on. And what we do, Steve, with all the guests that come onto the show, we ask you a little bit about how you got supporting your team and if you have any fond memories of watching Crewe, whether it's home or it's been away.
And my first game was about 1987. My dad had been a Man City fan, but I think he kind of lapsed around sort of early to late 80s. And he'd been to watch a few Crewe games. And then one Saturday he said, "Do you fancy coming?" And we went along. We played Hartlepool, won 1-0. Header from Peter Bodak, who I since learned was quite a footballer of some repute. I think he played for United and Coventry. And since then, it's been non-stop, really. I moved down to the southeast in about 1997, hooked up with a bunch of sort of southern-based Crewe fans and spent a lot of time travelling to sort of southern-based games. So 1987 was my first game. Good memories. Promotion at Tranmere, 89. It was a great afternoon on the pitch because both teams got promoted that day. So we're both on the pitch celebrating. The young me, I think in the fifth year of school, was a bit of a good experience. A couple of Wembley playoff wins. It's always a nice one. And just some odd games like winning 5-0 at Mansfield. We've been in the Championship for years, scrambling around the bottom and getting like a draw away from home as a result. And we got relegated and we turned up at Mansfield and won 5-0. And it had been this event that hadn't happened for years, going an away game and giving them a stuffing. But they're probably the key highlights, I would say, yeah.
Oh, definitely. Great memories of playoffs, as many Blackpool fans can join in with that. But obviously, you've just started a new podcast with a group of Crewe fans. Just how did that get started? And just tell us a little bit more about the show and how often you're on air.
There was an initial podcast that ran for about 3 or 4 episodes about 2 years ago, and it just sort of died a death. And then during lockdown, after the abrupt end to the season, Stu put out a message on Twitter saying he was looking to start a new podcast. And having been involved in the other one, I thought I'll offer my services again. They had a couple of kind of end of season shows, and now we've got up and running weekly. Every Sunday we put the show together after the match, and it gets released on a Monday. And Stu's also managed to bag a couple of sort of decent interviews, really. One with Pete Morse, who's was the local newspaper correspondent and does match day summarising. And one with James Collins, who was a coach at Crewe, played for us, and is presently, I believe, the under-23s coach at Wolves. So we've had a couple of sort of extra episodes with some really good interviews that have given us lots of insight.
No, definitely. What we'll do, we'll make sure we tag the podcast in every tweet or post that goes out to obviously give you a chance to gain some followers and an audience as well. So it's great that we've got other League One podcasts with us this season. Tim, we'll bring you back in for a second. Defeat last weekend for Blackpool against Ipswich. Many negatives, should we say, on social media and on the podcast itself. But what Blackpool have done this week, if they've brought in a few players. That must be a positive that Critchley's listening to the Seasiders podcast, isn't it?
Yeah, we've had a bit of a joke, haven't we? All the issues that we flag up seem to be acted upon, and long may it continue. I mean, obviously, last week we weren't able to see the two new centre backs that we brought in action, which hopefully we will tomorrow, or at least one of them. And as we're going to talk about, no doubt, during the course of the evening, we've got two new signings today, again in areas where we've really felt that we needed to strengthen in the midfield. And a certain player who I've been championing for the last 12 months has joined us from Liverpool, which is great. And I'm really, really looking forward to seeing him play.
Yeah, he's a player, obviously, you would have seen last year when Oxford came to Blackpool and Blackpool picked up the 3 points that day. What was it that made...
I don't know.
Oh, how Blackpool won. But when you looked at Woodburn as a player, what made him stand out to you, being a fan? And it's a great signing for Blackpool, as we've alluded to.
Yeah, I just think it was just that he always looked comfortable on the ball. He was always looking for attacking options. He was always looking to take the game to us. Obviously, I think he hit the post, didn't he, at one point, which with a great strike. We won 2-1. It was obviously, we had a great start to the season last season, but to be honest, it was a travesty of a result. And I think unfortunately for him, his season got cut short as a result of injury. And I think that's, if we've got a concern about how he's going to fit in and how he's going to play, it is that he seems to be injury prone, and we need to work on a way that gets him playing as many games as possible, because that there's no point in having a player if he's on the treatment table. So hopefully that's just a blip. I think, as we've spoke about before the show, Sam, he's the youngest ever player to score for Liverpool. He actually took Michael Owen's record off him. He's the second youngest player to score for Wales. I think he's got 10, 11 caps for them already. I've seen on YouTube today some great finish in a game that he played. And, he's a really, really exciting attacking option, which hopefully will take us that different level. Because obviously, as we've spoken about, Steve won't know, but as we've spoken about in previous shows, we've had a pretty turgid start to the season, albeit a couple of games maybe we deserve more out of it. But one win out of 5 is poor, and I'm looking for us to hopefully improve on that tomorrow.
No, without a doubt, and I'm not sure if he's available for tomorrow, whether he's signed before the deadline. Normally it's 12 midday on a Friday before the weekend's game. So fingers crossed the paperwork was done before then, because it'd be great to see him play against Crewe tomorrow. Gareth's got a comment saying Woodburn has to play and play well to force his way into the Wales Euro squad for 2021.
You need to pronounce it the way he's put it. Go on.
Cymru. Right, Cymru. There we go. I knew that was coming. But yeah, as Gareth says there, that he's got to play, and he'll be wanting to get as much game time, as minutes on the pitch as possible to force his way in. He scored a great goal against Austria, which you alluded to before. But where's he going to play in this Blackpool team? Do you think he's going to be a winger and is going to cut in like we've seen on highlights? Or do you think he's going to be that attacking midfielder that we're just lacking at the moment?
I've sort of we have just for Steve's benefit, we have a little bit of a WhatsApp group amongst the people who sort of follow the show, because there's some subscribers, and it's difficult because at the moment we play this Liverpool style 4-3-3, but I'm looking at the players we've got and I'm thinking actually it would probably, our last year's formation of a sort of a 5-2-3 would probably suit us slightly better with the best players we've got. But I think assuming we stay with the 4-3-3, I would see him as being the attack. I would probably see him as being the attacking player in the midfield 3, almost like a number 10 role, just sitting behind the main striker. I think that's where he would probably do the most damage. Now, obviously, that's how we then juggle players around to make sure that. I mean, there's always going to be injuries, isn't there? We've got games coming thick and fast, so I think having a decent sized squad is going to be quite important this year, anyway. But yeah, it's a conundrum, but a good conundrum, because I think he's at a different. if he's fit, is at a different level to what we've got.
No, I completely agree. And what I'm going to do is pass over some transfer news to you, Steve, if you're aware of any stuff that's gone out of Crewe today. But Matt said, has Crewe made any signings, or is the Crewe youth conveyor belt still in effect? I'll let you talk there, Steve.
I don't think there was ever any danger of us making any signings today. The key thing was, is anyone going to go out the door? And when I checked, they're all still there, which is good. Because I'm sure we'll talk about later, it's the core of the kind of next generation of the youth that's got us promoted last year, and they're the core of the first team. And there was a fear some of them might go, but the last time I checked, they're all still present. I'll be there tomorrow.
Perfect. That's good news. So, Matt, hopefully that's answered your question there. Back to the pod. Steve, obviously, Crewe sit 13th in the Sky Bet League One table as of now with 2 wins out of 4 in the league. MK Dons a 2-0 win and then a 3-0 win over Wigan at home. How would you assess your side's start to the League One campaign?
I think we're quite pleased, to be honest, because every game we've been competitive in, maybe except the first half against Charlton. I think we got caught out a bit there. And I think we dealt a bit of a rough deal by playing 2 of the relegated teams from the Championship. I think in a couple of ways, because they played, I think the last time they played was about 5-6 weeks earlier. And the last time we played was in March against Stevenage. And I think Charlton's last game was at Leeds. So even though they've been a pre-season, I just think they probably have that edge in sharpness because they played recently. And I just think playing those 2 teams that had dropped down was a bit of a leap in quality from what we played in the previous season. But even in the 2 games, we were in it, and we were very, very unlucky to lose at Hull, where for a long stretch we were the better team, but maybe faded a bit in the last 20 minutes and gave them a little bit too much respect. Dented the confidence a bit, but just suddenly seemed to find the spark against MK Dons, who dominated. They had 70% possession, which is unknown against Crewe, but they just didn't do anything with it. And we just caught them on the break and killed them with our finishing. It's a very un-Crewe-like performance. Normally we're the team that dominate the ball and maybe not quite have the cutting edge. So I think that gave the youngsters the confidence that they could do it. And then they put in an even more improved performance against Wigan. But since then, we've had a few Oxford debacles as well, which might just have slowed the progress a little bit.
Yeah, you've had this problem with COVID, haven't you? Sorry, Sam, I wasn't... You've had a problem with the COVID, which obviously caused the cancellation of your game. Are players still out tomorrow?
They were. It's very confusing because both the lads who would have been out against Oxford initially both played against Wigan, and then we had this mystery cancellation Tuesday for the rearranged Oxford game, and it's all kind of coming out today. Nothing's been mentioned, and Dave Artell's come out and has said that the EFL advised them that they couldn't play the game, that they'd have to say they couldn't fulfill the fixture. And if they didn't say that, they'd be given some sort of penalty. And no one quite knows why. And there's all sorts of whisper and suspicion on Twitter that I couldn't possibly repeat here. But no one quite knows why the game was postponed, because they had COVID tests again Wednesday and 31 players and staff all tested negative. So it's all a bit of a mystery. It'd be interesting. I've had a look through what Crewe's manager had to say today, but I'm sure that's won't be the end of it, really. But it'd definitely be interesting to see what happens with that, Steve. But it's a good job that the fixture's going ahead this weekend, as most people in Lancashire have known today, that there's been news of going back to Tier 3, which could be bad news. But again, football at the weekend, you can't go wrong with that, can you? Yeah, be better if we were there, but I thought it will do for now, won't it? Yeah,
how have you... how have you adapted to no fans being inside the ground? Are you quite comfortable watching the games at home, or I know we can't go back, but is that okay for you now? Or
part of me, on a very selfish level, because I live in the southeast, so some of these games I wouldn't have got to anyway. So it's quite nice to see them. But the flip side is I'm watching them and there's no crowd. So even though I'm not there, I think the lack of crowd does have an impact. And I'm looking at some of the fixtures down here, what I got to, and I'm thinking, well, when we go to Charlton, when we go to Wimbledon, when we go to Gillingham, am I going to be able to go? So I've adapted it. I've got into my routine, but it doesn't feel right. Sometimes the goal goes in, and I think, have we actually scored? because there's such a little reaction. It's difficult to tell sometimes.
Tim, we've had the complete opposite being in the arm field. Some people's devices seem to be 5 or 10 seconds ahead of us. So when we actually see the goal, it's very different kind of emotions, isn't it? When Blackpool do take the lead, or there's been a goal at the other end.
Yeah, that's something that, I mean, iFollow's got its glitches, hasn't it? And one of them seems to be that when everybody goes onto devices, you're all at slightly different points in the game, 5 or 10 seconds difference. So if you do watch it in a communal atmosphere, which we did last week and the week before, it has its downsides. I mean, you've also, I mean, I think if I ever went, not that I think we're going to be able to go again for this evening, by the way, is like a new supporters bar that's just opened right near the ground. But we would, you can sort of watch unofficially watch on your own devices, and but the problem is you're watching it and then somebody cheers on the other side of the room, or it comes up on Sky Sports News and you're 20 seconds behind. So it's not ideal. And I think the iFollow product has got a lot of work that needs doing on it, to be honest, if in the short term, because I think the EFL owe it to the fans who've paid for the season tickets, etc., to deliver a proper product. And I think it probably works better at home at the moment, doesn't it? That's the short answer. It works. That's how it works best. But I've been championing the fact that I think the EFL should license. I said with the Tier 3 coming in Lancashire, it's sort of taken the wind out of the sails of the argument. But I think the EFL should have tried to license pubs to show it and work on some way that worked for them and for the clubs and for the fans who don't necessarily want to sit at home in a very sterile atmosphere watching the game on their own. But anyway, that's part now, isn't it? Bearing in mind where we're at in Lancashire with the developments today, because I don't think pubs are going to be open anytime soon.
Yeah.
Nice.
And I follow the commentaries about 15 seconds ahead of the picture, so it can be quite a surreal experience.
Yeah, we end up sometimes around here listening to the away commentary, because there's issues with the quality of our commentary, and so sometimes actually it's quite interesting to listen to the way for instance, we played Gillingham, listening to the Kent commentators, because you get a different perspective on the game sometimes than you do from your local commentator, and it's quite nice actually. So it's probably something I'll stick with for the rest of this season, just listening to the way commentary, just for the variety that you get, I think.
Definitely. Steve, back to Crewe. Obviously, automatic promotion last season, despite the campaign not finishing. Were you quite confident that Crewe were always going to be in the top 3 places, if there wasn't a global pandemic?
Yes. But in my heart of hearts, I know what I like, and I think no matter how many points clear, you think there could be some sort of catastrophe. But we were top of the league, and of course, when we stopped, and there was hope that we might get our first ever championship, but sadly, points per game denied us that. But I think we were confident. But with Crewe, there's always that little niggle. You think they're always going to do something stupid, but we'd built up a good head of steam, and everyone was really confident, and we were playing really well when the season drew to a close. So I think deep down, yes, but you can never trust them, ever.
It's a bit like Blackpool, that though. It's the last time we got promoted automatically was 1985, and every other promotion we've achieved has been via the playoffs. So and sometimes we've been. I remember in '96 we were like cruising and managed to do a kamikaze running, and then losing the playoffs. So I think we've all bought the T-shirt, haven't we, of the disappointments that you get.
Is that the Bradford? I remember that. Was that Bradford?
Yes.
I remember that.
And it's we've all been. I said we've actually had a good run in the playoffs overall, but that was a bitter one in 1996. I think a couple of people have mentioned, actually, I'll mention it now. It's just simply because I think it needs to be, and I've seen it come across the screen. I've got to say, from a Blackpool fan's perspective, Crewe away is always one of the games that we really look forward to. So it's sort of extra disappointing tomorrow that we're not going to be there. I don't know what it is. I think it's the fact that it's so easy to get the train, get straight off at the station, and then hit the local pubs around the ground. There's no real massive rivalries. It's always quite a friendly atmosphere, and it's a nice little ground, and we've got some good memories of going there. So missing out on that this year is a disappointment for most of us, I think.
No, again, echo what both of you said there, especially with Crewe, Steve. 3 wins on the bounce, all coming at home. Momentum obviously continued from last season. Is it a good time to maybe play Blackpool with them having a bit of a lesson taught to them against Ipswich last weekend?
I think they'll have something they want to prove. Ipswich are a good side as well, aren't they? And as you said, you've alluded to a couple of new signings who, if they're playing tomorrow, they'll want to make an impact as well. And you've got a bit of a secret weapon, because I would imagine that Critchley probably knows a lot of these Crewe lads quite well, and he knows how they might set up, and he might know how to exploit their game. So you do have a bit of inside knowledge there in the gaffer as well, who might be able to kind of plot that away win.
Tim, coming across to you. Crewe have only conceded 2 goals at home in the league campaign, with Blackpool, I'll say, having chances or going into the opponent's half really good, but actually having those shots at goal is a bit of a concern. Would you agree with that? Or
yeah, I mean, I think our problem has been, the biggest problem we've had is, of course, the defence and the way that we have been conceding goals. And the big imponderable for me tomorrow is how we're going to line up and how that's going to impact on the way that we play. So Steve doesn't know this, but we've had, obviously you'll know Michael Nottingham, who was one of the players who was with you last year, and he was played at centre back at the start of the season, and it's fair to say had a rather torrid time, and was unceremoniously dropped by Critchley a couple of games ago. And we brought in a couple of decent centre backs, but none of us have seen them play yet. One of them played for Northern Ireland the other night and seemed to have had quite a decent game. And we've got a couple. I mean, we've had literally. I don't know where we're up to now. I think we've had about 15, if not 17, new players in this season. And tomorrow there is probably only going to be 1, maybe 2 players who played last year in the starting 11. So it's a very, very. There's a lot of changes. There's not a lot of stability. I don't mean this in a critical way of Blackpool, really, but there's not a lot of. There isn't like you've got the core of the team that got you promoted last year, I suppose, still together, and we've got a lot of new players who are still finding the feet and how they're going to play. We saw some flashes of brilliance pre-season against Liverpool and Everton, and then we've basically, when we've come up against well-organised Division 1 sides, we've to be honest, come up short. And so the likes of Gillingham and Ipswich last week have done a proper job on us, and it's shown up our deficiencies. So hopefully the recruitment over the last 2 weeks, it all looks like quality, and I expect them all to be in or around the starting 11, to be honest, all that 4, particularly the 2 we've signed today, and at least one of the 2 centre-backs we've signed. So it's going to be interesting. We're almost like looking at a new team, completely new team again, aren't we, in relation to the way we're like to possibly set up tomorrow. I don't think Woodward will start tomorrow, even if he's eligible, and I suspect he might not be. And most certainly the other lad that's joined us today from he was released from Barnsley. Yeah, he was released from Barnsley, wasn't he, in the summer? Dougal. I don't think he most certainly seemed to come in quite late. So although my little spies tell me that the paperwork was with the EFL this morning, so who knows?
Well, that's good news for Woodburn if both deals were in before midday, because I'm not sure if that is the deadline. It was last season. Any deals on a day before a game had to be done at least by that time. So fingers crossed with that one. Moving on from obviously Blackpool and how they can approach the game against Crewe. What we've done is, due to picking up a few issues on YouTube with copyrights of videos, we've got some graphics on the screen which I'll show. It's David Artell's one of his quotes from the pre-match press conference, and he says here, "I'm looking forward to seeing Neil Critchley. He's a good bloke, and I wish him all the best after 5 p.m. on Saturday. Blackpool will be prepared, and it will be an intriguing encounter. Our results have been good so far, but it'll be a tough test this weekend. Let's see where we are come full time." Steve, I'll come to you first. Obviously been in charge since 2017. What are your thoughts on David Artell, and what job has he done down at Gresty Road?
I think he's done a fantastic job, because he came in and we were at a fairly low ebb. Steve Davis initially did a great job, got us promoted. We won the Johnson's Paint Trophy, had a couple of decent seasons, but he didn't really tie some of our youngsters on long-term contracts. A lot of them left, and then the club sort of, I felt, got a bit disconnected from the supporters, and there was lots of negativity. And we got relegated in fairly miserable fashion at Port Vale, which is never a good place to get relegated at. And I think a lot of the fans lost faith in Davis. And when he went, there was lots of elation. Artell came in, and the team was in a bit of a state of flux, really. We had a lot of the kids who are playing now in the team, but they weren't ready. They were really struggling, and people were on their backs. And it really was, I think, a waiting game to get them the experience they need to improve. And eventually, key signings for us, really, and key signings he made was Paul Green came in, a really experienced old head, who almost single-handedly changed the attitude of the team, who were used to losing. And he kind of came in and just seemed to give everyone this drive to win and be more competitive. And then Artell boasted that with Chris Porter and Mickey Hunt, 3 more experienced heads who, again, just instilled that professionalism in the team. And by that point, the kids had found their feet, and we had this really nice mix of a core of really youthful talent, but these 3 really experienced, savvy old heads in there, seeing them through. And it started the year before we got promoted, actually. From Christmas to the end of the season, we were the form team. And if the season had been, I think, 6 games longer, we'd have made the playoffs. And so the last season that was halted started, and we picked up from there, really. And the youthful players all found their feet, and those 3 experienced heads really saw us through. So he's done a great job bringing on the kids and doing the most uncrew thing of bringing in experienced heads, which we never really used to do. And to have 3 30-plus players in a Crew team was unheard of, really. And they all played fairly regularly.
Mm-hmm. We'll come back to Artell in a second, but a good point you make there is a manager being brave, going against maybe what he believes in or what the club believe in, especially. Tim, to you here, we've seen Neil Critchley bring in players aged, I think it was 20, mainly 25 and under, shall we say. Hasn't really got that experience head in terms of age, and who's maybe been at maybe championship level, maybe some games in the Prem, like a few of the players Steve was alluding to have done. Is that what Critchley's missing in terms of this Blackpool side? Great players, young players who can gel in the 2 or 3 years they've got contracts with the club. But does a team need 2 or 3 experienced players in there to really, really push them forward?
I think so. I think if you've got to get the right mix and the right balance. And whilst I think he was, for me, his skills were and his abilities were fading a bit towards the end of last season, and he sometimes came in for a bit of a stick. You know, we had Spear in last year, who was very, very experienced, and we had various other players in the team who'd been around the block, players like Feeney, to a lesser degree, Nangele. You know, we had a very, very solid, relatively solid back line as well. Quite a few games under the belts. And we've gone from that to a very, very, for me, relatively experienced side, very young side. And I think they probably need that old head in there. Interesting, we always, Steve, we always champion to a degree, because he lives across the road from us. Well, not just because he lives across the road, because he's a great player. We've always championed trying to get Charlie Adam back. And we always felt that somebody with his experience, not necessarily, he knew it wasn't him, but just somebody with that level of experience would help pull all the other lads together and bring them on a bit. And interestingly, I know it's been on the feed tonight. He scored apparently a great goal for Dundee tonight on the live game. But I think that's right, and I think obviously we brought Dougal in today, and Dougal is he's not that well known in England. I don't think. Obviously, he's played at Barnes in England, but seems to have spent a lot of his formative years in the Dutch league, and it's going to be interesting to see what he brings to the team, because we've been saying week in, week out that this Blackpool team has not got a captain, and Husband's probably been the closest thing to it, but as you know, he can be erratic and he makes mistakes, and he's got himself sent off the other week against Lincoln, misses the Ipswich game, and I don't know whether he'll walk straight back in tomorrow. I don't know, but we do need a few leaders in our team, and my concern was that everybody's playing their own game, and there's nobody really yet grabbing hold of somebody around the collar and doing that captain's job and saying, pull your socks up, figuratively, and you're not pulling your weight, whatever it might be, giving a bit of encouragement when it's needed, and also just playing safe. Steve, we were beating Lincoln 2-1 with 7 minutes to go, and contrived to lose. Now, if you had a captain on the pitch, he would be shouting across the sideline, we're not giving this away. Nobody seemed to be doing that, and then within a minute we've given a penalty away. We get a player sent off, and then we farcically concede a third goal, and that's where I think the lack of experience really tells in our side at the moment, and the lack of cohesion that's brought about by. I'm sure it'll come, but it's lack of cohesion by the fact that we're changing virtually the whole squad rather than doing it evolving into a new team. We seem to have gone for the nuclear option and got rid of everybody and brought in a new side, which hopefully is going to work. But that's why we're losing games for me. I just think we're inexperienced as a 11.
Let me just come in here. I think it's T Johnson 931 has said we have 2 to 3 experienced players in Maxwell, Turton, and Medine. I think it's important that when we say the word kind of experience, it's not maybe the number of games they played, because they've maybe played predominantly in the League One and League Two levels. Probably more about someone who's been a bit higher up the leagues, knows how to win. Medine spent some of his career towards the bottom, with Bolton comes to mind. Turton's not really stepped up to be in that team to go and win promotion. Maxwell, Preston, a few Fleetwood, obviously. But when I'm maybe talking about experience, for me, I talk about, like I said, the leader on there, someone who knows how to manage a game. And for me, I get T Johnson's point, but for me, I won't class them as experienced players. Tim, I don't know what your views are on the comment there.
No, I'm looking at captain material, and the best teams, the teams that get promoted, have generally 2 or 3 captains in the side. Now, that's nothing to do with age. Tony Adams, going right back and showing me age again, was one of the best captains of a football team at age 19. Ray Wilkins was as well at Chelsea. This is actually slightly before my time. But you can be a great captain as a young player. But what we're looking, I just look around our team, or have been looking around our team, and I didn't see the captains there. Now I'm hoping that our Icelandic, our Viking, is going to be of that ilk. I'm hoping that Dougal's going to be of that ilk, and I'd like to think that if we get that spine right and get that solidity in there, and then we can hopefully then push on and really do what we achieve the results. I think actually, when we look at the quality we've got in the squad, achieve the results that we're capable of, and I think that's where it's that type of experience we're missing, as distinct from games under your belt. I mean, I don't see Medina as a captain. I don't see Turton as a captain, and I've never ever seen any goalkeeper as a captain. Now, some people might disagree with me, but I would never ever. And we've named Maxwell captain, not every game, but for quite a few games. And for me, that's just a waste. The goalkeeper will or should be organising his back 4, back 5 anyway. But they shouldn't be captaining the team, because obviously they're limited as to where they can get on the pitch. End of.
Steve, your thoughts on kind of keepers of captains. One comes to mind is Oliver Kahn by Munich. I believe Casillas was sometimes captain at Real Madrid. Do you think the captain's that player maybe at the centre half or that person in the middle who can see the whole picture and really get around, rally his men together in certain moments? Because the keeper isn't really going to be able to shout from his 18-yard box down to his striker, sorry. And a midfielder, he's got that thing of being in the middle of the pitch, seeing what's going on. Just what are your thoughts on that captaincy role with the goalkeepers?
I'd be quite, if the keeper is a character who's got that respect and has got that authority, I'd be quite happy for the keeper to be that captain. Breaks in play, gets a chance to give his orders to people. So I think it very much depends on the character. I mean, none of those experienced head I mentioned were ever our captain. Perry Ng was our captain last year. Paul Green wasn't, but his influence was there and was steady. But I traditionally, you want your centre half issuing that rallying cry, giving people what for and sorting them out. But I think if the keeper's got respect, and the names you mentioned there are really good examples, then absolutely, I think a keeper is a fine person to be captain, provided they've got that personality. Really, that's the key thing.
No, I agree. Sorry, go on.
Sorry, it's not tactical insights. It's that heads up, know-how. We've got to close the game out. He's not going to be kind of tweaking and changing the tactics. It's just lifting people and organising things. He's never going to really be responsible for changing the shape of the team.
Yeah, Matt Smith's got a comment saying Zoff, Schmeichel and Kahn did okay. I get that, but again, those teams will have 6 or 7 different leaders on the pitch. Gareth says, I'm still not convinced by Maxwell. Mind you, I would have preferred Alwick. Matt Smith, another comment saying, I think we need 3 captains all across the park. So again, I think that kind of comes from my comments that, yes, you need that one leader that probably leads by example, whether it's talking or what he does on the pitch. So it'd be interesting to see if Blackpool can get those players in. Mitch said that works well when you have the 3 captains, which Tim has mentioned. When you only have 1 captain material, like we have just now, it doesn't work when it's the goalkeeper. Interesting comments there. Again, everyone get your comments in on what we're discussing or topic-wise. It's great to get your insight and your views on the show. We've talked about Crewe. We've talked about David Artell, the manager. Moving on to Neil Critchley. In his pre-match press conference yesterday, he said it's massively important that we show some togetherness and spirit, as we can't change what's happened, but we can control what happens in the future. The players have responded in training this week. They're hurting from the start we've made, and we all want to improve. Tim, over to you with this one especially. He says the players are hurting. What kind of reaction are you expecting from Blackpool come 3 o'clock tomorrow?
Well, I think what we've seen the owner again, and I stress again, put his money where his mouth is, and he's supporting the manager and he's supporting the club in bringing players in. It's an extraordinarily difficult time. As Steve said, they're not able to recruit. We've recruited and recruited yet again. And, I think we're not helped by the fact that we haven't got any support behind the side, but that's the same for everybody at the end of the day. But I think the players owe it to the manager and owe it to the owner to, roll the sleeves up and carve out a few results for us. And again, I think when we identify who those leaders are, I think that will define the way that we play, and it will define who gets that starting 11 shirt, because that's what we're missing. So, between our 2 new centre backs and between our 2 new centre midfield players, those who step up to the plate and show that they can not just play fancy football, but also get the tackle in when it's needed, encourage people when it's needed, forge a team out of this huge influx of players. They'll be the ones who nail down a starting place.
Last week, Neil Critchley came under some, should we say, criticism for what he said post-match, saying the way his side played didn't reflect the scoreline. Again, if you can't defend or you give easy goals away, unfortunately, in this league, you're never going to pick up the points. And I know he's a new manager. He's learning every day on and off the pitch with maybe what he says or how he goes about the team. And his experience in terms of what he's done at Liverpool, but he's new, isn't he, to this role of being the main man at a football club, Tim, to do this. But again, it's in transition for him as we talk about the players. But you just hope results come from him, because he's obviously got the accolades to back his CV up. But it's about getting results on the pitch in the day, not about developing players.
Yeah, that's the point. As an under-23 manager, you have one task, and that is to prepare players for the first team and results, whilst I'm sure Liverpool under-23s don't want to lose games of football. But you have young players who generally don't answer the manager back, don't spit the dummy out, and they have a goal of trying to progress forward in that team into the first team. And it's a fundamentally different dynamic, I think, to get yourself in a dressing room with the likes of Medine and players like that who will have characters, will have a view, won't be happy when they're not starting, and you've got to manage that. And you're dealing with other managers who are very, very experienced. We said at the time, didn't we? Evans at Gillingham did a job on us when we played them. It's anti-football, but it worked, and I think we've got to be. He's on a steep learning curve, and I'm sure he's got all the attributes to make sure that he succeeds. But he has shown, in my view, some naivety in relation to his selection. I think not sticking with Nottingham when it was obvious to all of us that he shouldn't be starting was a mistake. And I think there are some other mistakes that have been made, particularly in relation to the substitutions. But he doesn't know these. He's still getting used to these players. We're not saying we know more than he does. It's just, as fans, you can see. We could all have told him Nottingham isn't going to work at centre-back. We all knew that. But it probably took him 4 or 5 games to reach the same conclusion. So, yes, it's still a very, very exciting time. It's still, the players, some of the players we brought in, particularly today, really, really impressed with again. But we've got to create a team out of them, not just have this... you can't just send 11 players out. Any time you send within reason, 11 players out of the pitch who've never played together before against 11 players who've played together for 2 or 3 seasons, all things being equal, the players who played together before will always win, and that's because they work for each other. Mm-hmm. They know where each other are doing the runs. They know where each other are going to be covering, and that allows them to take risks. And we're just making too many schoolboy errors at the moment. The right back gets caught way out of position. We get skinned down the right because nobody's covering him. And it's about getting used to thinking, right, well, that's whoever's playing right centre back's got to. If he's going to push on, he's got to drop in. But Crewe will see. You'll see this tomorrow, Steve. We're very much a work in progress, and I think we all got a little bit giddy at the start of the season with our recruitment, thinking that we would be better than we are. And I think a realigning of expectations for this season is probably called for. Hopefully, I'm wrong, but I think it's going to be mid-table this season for us, the way we're looking at the moment. But some teams have, I remember the year we got promoted in 2001 under McMahon. We were second bottom around this time in the year, if not a bit later, on TV. We went away and won, and we ended up getting promoted. So hopefully I'll be proved wrong. But I actually think Crewe might win tomorrow.
Interesting. We'll get to the score predictions later on. Steve, to bring you in before we move on to past games between the two sides, Gareth wants to know, who are the men to watch for Crewe tomorrow? He talks about being a team that have been together for a few years now, but what standout players would you recommend Blackpool watch tomorrow?
2 fullbacks, Perry NG right back, Harry Pickering left back, phenomenal, real talents. Spent most of their time in the opposition's half. Both really adept at attacking. The link up down the left-hand side between Kirk and Pickering Charlie Kirk, who plays kind of inside left down the line for Pickering, is probably one of the link-ups in the division. They scored a fantastic goal last week against Wigan, a crossfield ball. Kirk brought it down, did about 4 kick-ups on the side of the pitch, and then as the ball dropped, he just played it through 2 defenders to Pickering, who's our fullback, who was through one-on-one with the goalie. So the 2 fullbacks, Charlie Kirk, left-hand side as well, I think quite highly rated. Another one we're quite pleased didn't go to them transfer deadline. Likes to cut inside, plays down the left, but cuts inside on his right. I'm sure Critchley's watched that one. I'm sure he's aware of that trick. I don't think he's scored yet this season, so he's due a goal. And then there's Callum Ainley, who's been around the team for what seems like years, and we've never really found a place to play him. We played him in one of the, because we play a 4-3-3, I think like you mentioned Blackpool do, and we tried playing him in those wide attacking positions. It's not really worked. And he played a few times in midfield last year and looked quite good. And on Saturday against Wigan, he played like the third kind of most attacking midfielder. And Luke Murphy and Ryan Wintle were sort of holding the midfield and keeping the play ticking over. And it just gave Ainley the right just to roam forward. And he's got really quick feet. He's probably got the most ability in that team, but he's not really played enough games because no one quite knew where to play him. But if Saturday's anything to go by, they've finally found the right position for him. And he's, I would argue, the most talented of the lot, but the least heralded because he's just not had the game time. And then next to him, Wintle, who just holds the team together, gets the ball, wins it, keeps the play ticking over, and can stroll forward and stick one in the top corner from 25 yards. I think the first 2 games for him were a bit of a wake-up call because we all felt he was breezing through games in League Two, and he was one of the best players on the pitch every week. And I think against Charlton and against Hull, he just got caught in possession a few times, and it was almost like he wasn't quite aware of the pace of League One. But after those first 2 games, he seemed to acclimatise, and he's now got a better sense of how much time he's got on the ball, and he's almost found the pace of the level, and he's begun to dictate games again. So he's a real, I wouldn't say unsung because everyone recognises how important he is, but he's another real pivotal player in that team.
Interesting, Gareth. Hope that answers your questions and many Blackpool fans who are wondering who Crewe's danger man or danger men will be tomorrow. Bison, just reading a few comments before we moving on to another section. Bison says, we haven't done well against teams that sit back. There will be plenty of space tomorrow to exploit. Mick, as you saw on the screen, he said tomorrow is the day. Let's hope that's the case. And Ryan says, hopefully we will be better defensively tomorrow with Ballard or Gretterson hopefully starting. So there are your comments. Keep them coming in. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to the Seasiders Podcast YouTube channel so you don't miss any of the action and you're notified when videos come out. And you can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook for more content. So make sure you do that. Moving on to when we met before. Both Blackpool and Crewe have met just 32 times in league and cup competitions, with the first dating back to 1911-12 season. 3 fixtures were played that campaign, all in 1912 and all in the FA Cup. A 1-1 draw to start off with, then a 2-2 draw, and then a 2-1 win for Blackpool. 11 days between the first and the last game. Blackpool's biggest win over Crewe came in 1985, which we were discussing before we came on air, when the Seasiders won 6-1 at home. Blackpool later went on to finish second in the league under Sam Ellis, winning promotion to Division 3. A bit of a quiz there, a bit of a question for all Blackpool fans, and Tim, you might know this one, but who was the top goal scorer for Blackpool that season?
John Deere with 13 goals.
People call me Stato, don't they? Correct. 13 goals in the league, 15 in all.
The reason I tend to, I've got a particular soft spot for that team because I started supporting Blackpool probably a little bit later than most lads do, because my dad was a Liverpool fan and he was used to work on Saturdays anyway. And so I didn't really start until 78, and 1985 was the first time I ever saw Blackpool play well, because we ended up in the re-election zones in 1982-83, Then Sam Ellis came in from Watford where he was assistant to Graham Taylor and forged this team that had it had Eamon in it and Paul Stewart and John Deere centre mid, Billy O'Rourke in nets, Pauline's late husband, and it was a great. It was the first side I ever saw promoted, so I tend to know quite a bit about them. I was just in sixth form at the time, and it was a great period for Blackpool Football Club.
I have just put a question out there on all message board. So if you didn't hear the question is out there for you to get your comments in. Who was Blackpool's top goal scorer in the 1985 season, the season where Blackpool won 6-1 against Crewe? So leave the comments in the comments section below, and we'll see who gets that one right. Looking back at the last meetings, they were both in the 2016-17 season in the League Two campaign. I've actually not written the score down. I think it was 2-2. The first one, Blackpool took the lead thanks to Nathan Delfonso, and then doubled their lead just before half-time thanks to a Tom Aldred goal. And then 2 second-half strikes, one from Chris Dagnall and the other from Blackpool's very own Ollie Turton, meant it was a share of the points on that occasion. And then the other fixture, the two sides played out a 1-1 draw. Blackpool took the lead thanks to an own goal by John Guthrie after 10 minutes, and then Ryan Lowe equalised with 20 left. Steve, to bring you back in, any memories between Crewe and Blackpool that maybe stand out to you on a personal reason or just the excitement of the game?
One that really sticks out, it was probably early to mid-90s. It was Crewe 4, Blackpool 3. And it kind of summed Crewe up in the 90s, really, which was, okay, we'll let one in and we'll go and score one. We'll let another one in, we'll go and score one. Real sort of seesawing game. I remember, from the Blackpool perspective, this leggy, rangy midfield player, the floppy fringe. And I knew he went on and had a really good career. Well, what I thought was a good career. So I Googled him in the week in preparation. I think it was James Quinn. I think he was playing around that time, and he really stood out. I think he scored a goal for Blackpool, and he kind of ran the show for them. They're quite unlucky to lose, and it's a big memory of mine that seeing him at an early age. But quite a good team there. I think Neil Lennon was playing, but it was a really kind of epic seesawing game, which summed Crewe up in the 90s, to be honest.
I'm not sure if people obviously watching what's happened to Tim. Either he's left his charger at work. That's a usual thing on a Friday, or there's just been some internet connection issues, so we'll try and sort that out as soon as possible. Moving on to a section, those who have played for both clubs. Obviously, we've spoken a little bit about Neil Critchley. Welcome back, Tim. We missed you for a second there.
Trying to reply to a post from Bison's who was saying that O'Keefe was top scorer, and I managed to disconnect myself at the same time.
Those who played for both clubs, Jacko's got the first one in, which we'll bring straight away, and it's David Vaughan. One of my favourite players watching Blackpool, especially in the promotion to the Premier League and the Premier League season. Very, I say, underrated. But looking at his kind of stats at Crewe and Blackpool, came through the youth ranks at Crewe, 97 to 2007 season, 185 games, 18 goals to his name, and then joined Blackpool in the 2008 to the 2011 season, scoring 4 in 109 games. Tim, just sum up David Vaughan for us, because he was an unbelievable player, and like I alluded to before, a player that maybe didn't get the credit due to the performances and standout moments that Charlie Adam had.
Yeah, well, to me, he reminded me, he was like the water carrier of our side, wasn't he? He did all the dirty work, the simple stuff that allowed Charlie Adam to do what he did. I know he joined us from Real Sociedad, I think. I don't know quite why he ended up out there. But what a great player, and it was hugely disappointing to me, and I know many others on here, when he was allowed to walk away because he wanted to sign a new contract at the start of the Premier League season, and then he was messed around, as many players were, and ultimately ended up walking away and going to Nottingham Forest. And that was that should never have been allowed to happen. I don't think he really wanted it to happen. Actually, I think he went to Sunderland. Actually, thinking about it, didn't he? Before he went to Forest. He was a linchpin in that promotion side, and also stepped up in the Premier League and proved he could do it. And he did it. You know, he didn't just about do it. He did it with aplomb. And I've got a lot of time for him. He's a nice, unassuming guy as well.
Steve, your kind of views on David Vaughan, obviously there for 10 seasons before moving on and coming through the ranks. Do you remember him playing for Crewe as a young lad?
Great player, good feet, good dribbler, was a key part of our really, really successful team in the Championship. I remember a game at Derby when he went on a dribble from his own half. He must have run past about 6-7 players. We thought we were going to see one of the goals of all time. And then he missed when he got clean through. It was this phenomenal run where he dribbled past all their team and then missed at the 11th hour. But a really, really good, pivotal player for us. I think he ran his contract down and then got that rather bizarre move to Real Sociedad, like you said, which just came out of the blue and didn't really work out there for him. But he left a big hole in that Crewe midfield. And he's back coaching at the club now, I believe.
Did he play centre midfield for you, or out on the left?
He started out as a left back. We played a few games at left back, and then when we got relegated, and we found that teams used to just target the back post of their big man, because of course he's only a little fella. And then he ended up playing centre midfield, left midfield a lot of the time. Yeah,
when he first joined us, he tended to play on left midfield, and he was a good player, but. When I can't remember now, it was Holloway or Tony Parks moved him into the centre. But when he moved into the centre, he just went up into an upper level. And as somebody said there, actually, and I'd forgotten this, that in the Premier League season, he walked away with all the Player of the Season awards. So I think that's a testament to him, that in a team that had Charlie Adam, who was undoubtedly the star player. The fans still recognise the job that he did and how well he did it, I met him when he came back and played in Brett Ormond's testimonial. He was the best player on the pitch then as well. To be fair, I think he was one of the few players still playing at a decent level. But you know, it was a crying shame that we didn't see him for longer than we did, to be honest, because the opportunities were there for the club to have tied him down to a long contract.
Very interesting indeed, and hopefully those days are gone when players' contracts will be allowed to run out. Other players before we go through to the fans' comments. Ollie Turton was 7 years at Crewe from the 2010 to 2017 season, played 170 games at Gresty Road, scoring 4 goals, and then joined Blackpool 3 years ago, and he's played over 100 games for the Seasiders, scoring 2 goals. Neil Critchley, he obviously connections, managing Blackpool and playing the 1 game for Crewe in the 99-2000 season. There's a little link there. One player, which Steve, you can kind of start off with, Phil Clarkson at Crewe from 91 to 96, 27 goals in 98 games, and then Blackpool 97 to 2002, which obviously helped Blackpool win promotion in the 2001 season with the win against Leyton Orient. And there he scored 35 in 171 games. Any memories of Clarkson, Steve?
I remember Phil. I saw his league debut. He scored against Scarborough on his league debut. And there's an infamous piece of Dario still on YouTube, because we played Scarborough. We were 3-0 up. They had a man sent off, and the game finished 3-3. They got 3 goals in the last 10 minutes. They had 10 men. And on the radio, Dario said he wouldn't be surprised if Phil, I think he came from Fleetwood. He said, I wouldn't be surprised if he wants to go back there, judging by the shambles he's just seen on the pitch here. But did well for us. He couldn't. He was quite slow, but he was always capable of nicking a goal, and did well in some of our teams that were sniffing around the playoffs. And I think he was a bit underrated, because we had Murphy, Lennon, Wally, who technically were all superior players to him, but he was a workhorse and he would always nick you a goal. And I think he was a little bit underrated by lots of Alex fans.
When we were speaking beforehand, we were speaking about players who played before, and we mentioned Steve McCauley. In fact, I think Steve and Phil Clarkson both played in the Fleetwood team together. and both, I think, joined Crewe in around the same time, if I remember rightly. And you had a great team back there. I mean, you mentioned them and Hignett, and I'm sure there's some other players that you could mention to me who went on and had very, very good careers at a high level as well. And you were a joy to watch back then. I remember, and it was interesting to see how what is a small team, to be fair, isn't it? Could harness so much talent, and you were able to get up to what's now the Championship, if it wasn't called the Championship then, and hold your own, weren't you? I've forgotten how many seasons you stayed up there now, but it was a few, wasn't it?
I think in total there's a relegation in between, but it was about 11 seasons, 10, 11. We spent 9, then got relegated, and I think there was a couple more seasons before we came down again. So it's about 11 seasons.
Incredible.
Yeah, just mad. I think we'd struggle. I mean, Wickham are the comparison, really. And they've obviously had a bit of a nightmare since they've gone up, haven't they, really? They've not really done it. But I couldn't see it happening again. I think the landscape's changed too much for a club our size to get in the Championship and survive that long. But hopefully I might be proved wrong.
We shall see. Moving on to another player who's played for both is Luke Varney, and he featured last week in the Those Who've Been at Both Clubs feature. Was at Crewe from the 03 to 07 season, 27 goals in 97 games, and obviously was on loan at Blackpool during the Premier League campaign, 5 goals in 30 appearances for the Seasiders. Other names to bring out, and we were given these two by Matt in our group chat. Jason Kearton joined Blackpool on loan from Everton in the 92 season, played 15 games for Blackpool, and then joined Crewe in the 96 to 2001 campaign, where he played just under 200 games down there. Another one who joined on loan from Everton that season was Ashley Ward. 2 games and 1 goal for Blackpool, and at Crewe in his 2-year spell there, 25 goals in 61 matches. One that was mentioned just before we came on air was the Sheriff. Tim, you mentioned the Sheriff to me earlier on. Obviously, he's gone now. He's left Blackpool, but
I couldn't believe you left it. I couldn't believe you left him off. I mean, he's the most recent one. So obviously, Michael Nottingham. We've sort of touched upon him slightly already, haven't we? But obviously, he's joined us from Salford. I think probably 2 or 3 years with us, and spent quite a significant period of last season on loan with you, Steve.
Did really well. Came in, we lost Eddie Nolan, and he came in and looked a real player. And there was a real sense of disappointment when we couldn't get him back. But then we signed Beckles and Daniels. And I think actually we're probably happier with them than him, really. He was great in League Two. And I think, as you've mentioned, maybe that's his level, to be honest. Maybe he's not cut out for League One. We played him as centre-half, and he did brilliantly, but arguably at a lower standard.
I think it's, with Nottingham, I'm not going to go too far, that trying to play a certain way of football where maybe he's been asked to bring the ball out a lot more. Just didn't think he was that comfortable bringing it out. And again, other people might disagree, but I just felt there was a few errors in him in every game. And I wish him all the best at Accrington, who he obviously joined this transfer window. And hopefully he proves many people wrong. But I just think Blackpool at this time was the wrong place to be for him, especially with the turnovers of players. Another central defender, or right back, should we say, is Donovan Daniels. It was you, Steve, that mentioned Donovan there. Looking at his career, obviously playing at Crewe now, Blackpool 18 to 19 season, 24 games for him. Obviously, he's not played a game, has he, for Crewe yet?
He played in the
or has he made one?
The trophy game, and I believe he started the other weekend and got taken off. He's played about just over a game. Looked all right. Difficult to judge, really, because it was the under-23s he played against for Newcastle in the EFL Trophy. But I think we were pleased. We looked at his CV and thought he looks physically imposing as well. Looks the kind of centre-half we need. You look at his CV, West Bromwich Albion, where he had loan spells at Tranmere, Gillingham, Blackpool. I missed that one out, to be fair. 19 appearances, 1 goal. Aberdeen on loan before joining Wigan from West Bromwich Albion, and then loan spells at Rochdale,
a permanent move to Blackpool, and then Luton, where he played 3 games, and Doncaster Rovers last season. So again, a good CV and a player that I'm sure Crewe will use well, and another experience heading the team, as we alluded to before, Steve.
Yeah, absolutely. Desperately needed as well. We just were a bit concerned we couldn't get Nottingham back, who was going to play centre half, but signing Beckles from Shrewsbury was a decent move as well, I think. So there's 2 good centre halves there.
Beckles is one of those players that I've never frustrated when I worked at Fleetwood, going to games, and if Shrewsbury took the lead in any game that he played, he just took forever on throw-ins. He's one of those players that knows how to have good game management, shall we say. Looking at we talked about Ward, didn't we? We've talked about all the players there that I can remember. If anyone's got any more, do leave in the comment section below. Quick moving on to transfers, mainly Blackpool here. We talked a little bit about Woodburn signing. It's gone off my screen there. Obviously, 21-year-old joining on a loan deal until January. Let's hope it's extended until the end of the season. Joining back with a manager who has served as captain for the former Liverpool under-23 boss. There was Tim, I don't know if you saw this, that in the Blackpool preview or opposition report, the media guy at Blackpool has mentioned Matty Virtue signing a 2-year contract extension. Nothing officially from the club, yet to be confirmed as I'm aware. But that would be a good addition, wouldn't it, to Blackpool? I know he's been injured at the moment, not played, but a player that gives Blackpool that little bit of energy and a different dynamic.
I'm a great fan of Matty Virtue. I think he's a box-to-box midfield player, and I think we've missed him unbelievably at the start of this season. I think it's cost us plenty of points, to be honest, because I think if he'd been playing, I don't think we'd have lost all the games that we'd lost. So I've got a lot of time for him. So it's great to hear that he's extended his contract. Again, somebody who's played for Critchley in the under-23s at Liverpool. And so, he's somebody who Critchley knows well. And I'm sure he's going to have a great couple of seasons at Blackpool. And I expect him to be in and around that starting 11.
We shall see. Score prediction time shortly. So make sure you leave your scores in the comment section below. We'll be asking our 2 guests this evening what they think the result will be on Saturday. Blackpool also announced the signing of Kenny Dougal, as we alluded to before, on a 2-year deal. The 27-year-old has played 43 games for Barnsley in the last 2 seasons before being released, helping them to win promotion in the 2019. He's, as Tim said before as well, he played over 80 times in the Netherlands for Sparta Rotterdam. Again, helping them win promotion back to the top tier of their nation's league, should we say, or structure. So again, good business and good transfer window, Tim, for you on a Blackpool perspective.
Yeah, I think he probably gives us that experience in centre mid that in a defensive sense that we've probably been lacking since Spearing left. So look, I'm expecting him to be a starter because I think that might give Robson a slightly more ability to push forward. I think he needs to sort his hair out, though. He's got this bright peroxide blonde hair. It was you're not going to miss him on the pitch, and you're not going to confuse him with anybody else. That's for certain. So it reminds me of David Perkins. I think I've not seen anybody with that hair that white since he left us.
Someone mentioned Boris Johnson reference as well. I saw on Twitter, yeah. So it was all coming out there. But again, fans, what do you think of Blackpool's signings this transfer window? I think it's a positive, despite the results. A team that are in transition in the long term, and hopefully this season and not too far to come, the results will come and we'll start seeing the best from these players. As I said, score prediction time, because we are getting into that over an hour mark. Tim, I'll start off with you. Your score predictions for this weekend's match?
2-0 Crewe.
2-0 Crewe.
I don't think we're going to start with many of these new players. I think we might get one of the centre backs in. I don't think Dougal's going to start. I don't think Woodburn's going to start. And I think Crewe will take advantage of that because I think they're on a roll. I think they've got a system. I think they've got a pattern of play that we perhaps haven't quite cemented yet. So unfortunately, I think we're going to turn the corner in the next couple of games, hopefully. But I think this might be one game too soon.
John, with the comments just been on the screen. John Aspinall, he says 2-0 to Crewe as well. Steve BFC 55 says 2-1 to Blackpool. Ray Gregson, he says 2-1 to Blackpool as well. Gareth White, he says 5-0 to Poole, Yates hat-trick, Woodburn and Medine. Damn, this Bowland beer is good. Enjoying himself, I believe. We need some to celebrate things, don't we? Well, enjoy yourself in these tough moments. Steve, your score prediction for tomorrow's game?
I think 1-1. I think we're due a draw, to be honest. We're due a draw, and I think we're not getting a run of games. You know, we keep getting these games postponed, so we're building up momentum, and then the plug gets pulled. I think 1-1 for the draw. I was looking at Blackpool's forwards. I was having a look through the squad, and there's a lot of talent in the forward department. I know Yates scored a lot of goals at Swindon. Keshi Anderson, good player, and Medine's a good player. So there's a lot of know-how in that forward line that made me think might be a bit more about them than maybe initially thought. I think 1-1.
Jacko has also gone for a 1-1 result. Matt Smith, he says defence is on top, 3-3. Bit of sarcasm, I think, in that message. Bison's, he's got his comment in and says 3-1 to Blackpool, a comfortable win. Screen's frozen a second here. We'll get some more on. There we go. Andrew William Heap says 2-2. That's what he thinks the score is going to be. I've also got one from Josh. He says 1-1 Hamilton goal, Blackpool defensive error. It's like you've already read it, Josh. Phil Hornby from ITV. Phil, thanks for joining us this evening. He says 3-1 to Crewe. Interesting. A general mix there, Tim, in terms of results, and Blackpool fans not really optimistic going into this game.
I think it is, and it was that point I was making before. I think we've got this transition of getting these new players in the team and how quickly it will happen. I think it's a game too soon for many. And I think if you look at the last couple of performances against Lincoln and the Ipswich game, which, you know, with hindsight, we shouldn't have played because we didn't have to. If Crewe come at us, I just think we've got some mistakes in us as we've had in those games. So hopefully I'm wrong, and hopefully we might get a few of these players playing, and a couple of other players might step the game up a bit. I think Yates needs a goal. You know, if anybody needs a goal, it's Yates, isn't it? You know, Steve might not know, but he hasn't scored yet this season. Medine generally starts on the subs bench. Probably our most attacking, our most dangerous attacking player has been CJ Hamilton, who joined us from Mansfield last season. He's scored probably 3 or 4 goals this year, and he's got a turn of pace. But we're struggling a little bit on that left-hand side, and I think he might do. I think he might put Yates out left again, like he did against Ipswich, and play Medine down the middle. And I think to be fair, when Medine's played this year, he's putting a bit of a shift. So I think that's probably the right call for tomorrow, unless he's going to try something different, like put Kemp in there or something like that. I don't know.
Interesting. Not seeing much of Kemp, but
no,
that's another story. And final score prediction to come in, and one that I'm going with as well. It's 2-1 to the mighty Poole. Michael, thank you very much for your comments, and also a huge thank you to everyone who's joined in the conversation and has watched on either Twitter, Facebook, or YouTube this evening. Your support is great. Well, we're going to call that it for the show. 1 hour and 15 minutes in. Again, a huge thank you to our guest this evening. Steve, it's been great to have you on, and I hope you've enjoyed yourself.
Thank you very much. No, it's been good to be on. Pleasure. All the best for the season.
And I wish you the same, as your manager said, after 5 p.m. tomorrow only. Tim, again, great to have you on the show, and I'm sure you'll be on for your hat-trick of the Friday night preview shows very shortly.
Enjoyed it. Thank you very much. I had to come off the subs bench tonight, but it's always a pleasure.
That's where he's best, on the sub bench at times. But again, Matt Smith, thanks. Well done. Steve, appreciate it. Many comments coming in for your thanks. I'll try and get as many on before we finish the show. But as I said, that's enough from us. The Seasiders podcast will be live again tomorrow from 5:30 to review the game against Crewe. And if you want to join us live on the show and have your words, stay tuned on social media and find out how you can join the conversation and have your say. Let's hope that Blackpool can pick up all 3 points on the road for the first time this season. And as I said before, if you haven't already, please subscribe to the Seasiders Podcast YouTube channel so you don't miss any of the action. Also, follow the Seasiders Podcast on Twitter and Facebook for more content. I'm Sam Fielding. I've been your host this evening. Enjoy your weekend. Up the pool.
Up the pool!